Research.
So today we'll be going over the definition of what action research is. We'll do a few discussion questions on that. We'll go through all the steps of action research, hit you with a little bit of history. We'll do some article. We'll hit you with an article summary, go over some discussions. Then you're going to do a quiz, and of course we got that bibliography. So what is action research? So action research can be any method of research, qualitative or quantitative. It's always investigative, and the point of action research is to diagnose problems or weaknesses and come up with a solution through the research to address the problem. Usually this takes place within an organization.
So in every study, there are all types of assumptions. In action research, the assumptions that we have are the conducting research must be informed or qualified as being capable to identify problems. The researchers have to be committed. That's one of the assumptions, as well as being systematically engaged in research. So you want to know how to conduct action research. According to Lewin, there are four steps in action research: planning, action, observation, and reflection. In the first step, planning the change, that's where you're identifying the problem, you're collecting the data, you're devising a plan. Once you move on to that next step, that's where the action actually begins. You're executing that plan. You're investigating all the data that you collected so that you can actually implement that plan. Third, you're going to observe, collect data, and document all behaviors. Lastly, you're going to reflect. That's where you're analyzing the process and the consequences. One more step is added, and that's actually to repeat it all over again should you need to. All right, a little bit about the history of action research. The origins of action research are clearly not defined in literature. There are lots of different people who have contributed to it, but in 1940s, Kurt Lewin coined the term action research, and he actually described it as a spiral of steps, including planning, acting, observing, and reflecting. As action research continued to develop, other researchers collaborated to redefine the definition, which allowed for action research to be used in various types of studies and didn't limit where it could be used. One thing that Kurt Lewin always said was learning is more effective when it is an active rather than a passive process.
So now, moving on to today, in 2015, Calvert and Sheen conducted a research based off of task-based research, evaluating language learning and teaching. And what they were specifically looking to highlight was that action research was valuable in teaching languages, especially for task-based teaching. The thought was that action research allowed teachers to improve their understanding of how their student learns. The teacher was able to try to improve an approach to experiment with other options in teaching. The researchers looked to explain how setting tasks can be difficult for teachers because of the multiple variables that need to be taken into consideration. Through action research, the teacher was able to improve the task used to teach the students. Ultimately, when comparing task 1 to task 2, after the researcher actually improved processes from task 1 to task 2, there was an actual improvement between task 1 and task 2. Now, taking into consideration the actual variables between task 1 and task 2 in this specific research, we will ask you to take a look at what other areas that learning a second language can actually benefit from action research. So we ask you at this point, what are some of the benefits of action research for students learning a second language?
Okay, thank you, Miranda. So hopefully you guys have gotten a good feel of what action research is. So let's jump to a little mini quiz. This will test your knowledge and just basically see how well you listen to the presentation. So the first question is, what is action research? And you remember that from the first couple of slides when we gave you like a definition of what action research is. The next question is, who coined the term action research? And Natasha talked a little bit about the history and who actually came up with the theory. The next question is, what's the purpose of action research? And we discussed that as well. I do believe that Alex went over that a little bit, and so did Miranda and Natasha. Okay, the next question is, what does the first step in conducting action research entail? And that's a little bit more involved, but we did touch a little bit on what are the steps of action research method. The last question is, what is the importance of continuously reflecting on your theory while using this method? That's a little bit more involved, but Natasha did go over that when she talked about the steps. Okay, moving on to a discussion question. We're almost going to wrap up our presentation, but just kind of reflecting and just give it a little bit of thought. But for the first discussion question, let's talk about what is the most important step in action research. And also, how does this action research differ from any other methods of research? And if you do need to kind of get a little bit more information, you can review our presentation. You can also find more information in our bibliography. We have several sources there of research that use action research. They also talked about the steps of action research a little bit more. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation. Do you guys have anything else to add?